الله أكبر الله أكبر. الله أكبر الله أكبر. أشهد أن لا إله إلا الله. أشهد أن لا إله إلا الله. أشهد أن محمدًا رسول الله. أشهد أن محمدًا رسول الله. حي على الصلاة. حي على الصلاة.
وأذن في الناس بالحج يأتوك رجالا وعلى كل ضامر يأتين من كل فج عميق ليشهدوا منافع لهم ويذكروا اسم الله في أيام معلومات على ما رزقهم من بهيمة الأنعام فكلوا منها وأطعموا البائس الفقير.
In the name of Allah, the most gracious, the most merciful. The Hajj. Hajj is one of the noblest acts of worship and amongst the highest of good deeds. For it is a veneration of the signs of Allah and a glory to the Abrahamic faith and a sign of respect for the sacred house, the house that Allah made as a blessing for all of mankind. Hajj also is a manifestation of the power of Islam and a source of pride for the Muslims. It is an exercise that disciplines a person, causes him to be patient in the face of hardships and difficulties, and accustoms him to give up luxuries and other vanities of this world. Hajj is therefore a manifestation of the believer's love and submission to Allah, for it embodies his feelings towards his Creator in all of his actions, in its form and shape, in its spirit and heart, in its outward and inward acts, in its talbiyah and tawaf, in its dua and call. All of it is nothing except an indication of the believer's total submission to his Lord. It is for this very reason that its rewards are so great. For the Prophet ﷺ stated, "An accepted Hajj has no reward except paradise." The obligation of Hajj. Hajj was made obligatory in the 9th year after the Prophet ﷺ's hijrah, according to the most correct opinion of the scholars. Amongst the proofs for its obligation is the verse, "And complete the Hajj and Umrah for Allah." Also, the Prophet ﷺ said, "Islam is based on 5 pillars: the testimony of La ilaha illallah, and that Muhammad is the messenger of Allah, the establishment of the prayer, the giving of zakah, the fasting of Ramadan, and the performance of Hajj for whoever is capable of doing so." The blessings of Hajj. Allah has encouraged His servants to perform Hajj, for He has said, "And proclaim amongst mankind Hajj. They will come to you on foot and on every lean camel. They will come from every deep and distant wide mountain highways, so that they may witness acts that are a benefit to them." The famous scholar Mujahid said, "Benefits of this world and the hereafter." The Prophet ﷺ counted Hajj as amongst the best actions that a servant could do. Abu Hurairah radiyallahu anh reported that the Prophet ﷺ was asked about which actions were the best. He said, "To believe and have faith in Allah and His Messenger." He was asked, "Then what?" He said, "To strive or make jihad in the path of Allah." He was asked, "Then what?" He said, "An accepted Hajj." Narrated by Bukhari and Muslim. Abu Hurairah radiyallahu anhu also said, "I heard the Prophet ﷺ say, whoever performs Hajj and does not perform lewd acts and evil deeds, he will return as he was the day he was born," meaning sinless. Narrated by Bukhari and Muslim. He also reported that the Prophet ﷺ said, "One Umrah to the next is an expiation for all sins that were performed in between them, and the accepted Hajj does not have any reward except paradise." Narrated by Bukhari and Muslim. The conditions of Hajj. There are a number of conditions that must be met in order for the Hajj to be obligatory on the person and accepted by Allah. Firstly, Islam. Secondly, that the person be of legal age, in other words, past purity and of sound mind. Thirdly, that he be free, in other words, not a slave. Fourthly, that he is capable of doing Hajj. This implies, firstly, that he be physically strong enough to perform Hajj. Secondly, that he is financially capable of doing so. And thirdly, that the journey and path for Hajj is relatively safe and secure. The majority of the scholars have added an extra condition for the woman, that she is accompanied by a male mahram, such as her husband or family relative. The Malikis, however, allowed a woman to perform Hajj if she is in safe company, for example, a large group of women or a group of men and women. The timings and places of Hajj. The Hajj has certain timings during which it is performed. The Quran refers to this in the verse, "For Hajj are the months that are well known." These months are the months of Shawwal, Dhul Qa'dah, and the first 10 days of Dhul Hijjah. The person who wishes to perform Hajj cannot enter in the state of Ihram except during these months. In addition to the timings of Ihram, there are also certain places that a person must be in order to enter the state of Ihram. These were demarcated by the Prophet ﷺ himself. Ibn Abbas radiyallahu anhuma reported that the Prophet ﷺ demarcated for the people of Medina Dhul Hulayfa, and for the people of Syria Juhfa, and for the people of Najd Qarnul Manazil, and for the people of Yemen Yalamlam. He said, "So these places are for these peoples, and for those who come from those directions, even if they are not from those places, if they desire to perform Hajj or Umrah. As for those who live within these boundaries, then his place is where he lives, and that the people of Mecca wear Ihram from Mecca," related by Bukhari and Muslim. And another narration reported by Jabir, the Prophet ﷺ added, "And the place for the people of Iraq is Dhatu Irq," narrated by Muslim. So if a person crosses these boundaries, intending to perform Hajj or Umrah without entering into a state of Ihram, then he must give an expiation of a goat or sheep, unless he returns to the boundaries immediately and wears Ihram. Imam Abu Hanifa, rahimahullah, allowed a pilgrim to skip his particular boundary and enter into Ihram from another closer boundary. So, for example, according to him, the person from Medina does not have to wear his Ihram from Dhul Hulayfa and can instead proceed on to Rabigh and enter into Ihram from there. However, according to the majority of scholars, this is not allowed, and a person who does this must give an expiation. Prohibited acts in the state of Ihram. There are a number of acts that are not allowed for the pilgrim once he has entered into the state of Ihram. These are: firstly, to wear sewn pieces of cloth. What is meant by sewn is that they are cut in order to cover a specific limb, such as a sleeve for the arm. This prohibition is specific for men and not for women. Therefore, it is not allowed for a male pilgrim to wear a shirt, or pants or trousers, including undergarments, or a turban or a head covering. The woman, however, can wear whatever she wishes, as long as it covers her in an Islamic manner. She should uncover her face unless she is in an environment in which men can look at her, in which case she should lower her head garment so that it covers her face. Aisha radiallahu anha reported, "We used to be with the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam while we were in a state of ihram. Whenever a caravan passed us by, we would cover our faces by lowering our head garments, and when they moved ahead, we would lift them up again." Secondly, to apply perfume. It is imperative that the one in the state of ihram avoids all perfumes and similar items. This prohibition comes into effect after one enters the state of ihram. As for immediately before he enters into the state of ihram, then it is allowed for him to put perfume on his body and clothes, according to the Shafi'is and Ahmed. The Hanafis restricted the permissibility to his body only, whereas the Malikis prohibited it on both. The proof that it is allowed to apply perfume on his body and not on his clothes is the narration of Aisha radiallahu anha, in which she stated that she applied perfume on the head, in other words hair, of the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam, so much so that the effects and marks of the musk could be seen in his hairline and beard. Thirdly, to perform intercourse. It is obligatory on the person in the state of ihram to avoid intercourse with his or her spouse, and all acts that lead to it, such as kissing and sexual foreplay. Allah states, "So let there be no rafath, nor evil deeds, nor argumentation during Hajj." And the meaning of rafath is sexual intercourse and all that leads to it. Fourthly, to cut one's hair and trim one's nails. It is not allowed for the pilgrim to cut his hair or trim his nails from the time that he enters into the state of ihram until the first tahleel. Fifthly, to hunt. It is prohibited on the pilgrim to hunt animals and to help any other person hunt them, either by pointing to the animal or requesting another to do so, or even encouraging him. Allah states, "Permitted for you is the catch of the ocean and its food, for the benefit of yourselves and those who travel, but forbidden upon you is the hunting of land game while you are in a state of ihram." The types of Hajj. There are three types of Hajj. Firstly, ifrad, or singular. This is when a person intends to perform Hajj without performing an Umrah with it. Secondly, tamattu', or enjoyment. This is when a person intends to perform Umrah during the sacred months, then exit from the state of ihram, then re-enter it to perform Hajj. It is called tamattu', or enjoyment, because a person enjoys the acts that are usually prohibited for the pilgrim in between his Umrah and Hajj, since he leaves the state of ihram for a period of time. Thirdly, qiran, or combined. This is when a person intends to perform Umrah and Hajj together, without exiting the state of ihram. So the person performs Umrah, then stays in his ihram, and then performs Hajj with the same ihram. The scholars have all agreed that all of these three types of Hajj are allowed, but have disagreed concerning which one of them is the best. So whichever one a person chooses, there is good in it. The manner of performing Hajj. The Ihram. When a Muslim intends to perform Hajj, it is recommended that he wash himself completely, in other words make a ghusl, before entering the state of Ihram. He should then wear the clothes of Ihram, which are two simple sheets, one for the lower half of the body and one for the upper half. After he wears the clothes of Ihram, he should apply some perfume and then intend to enter the state of ihram by intending it in his heart and by saying it verbally. This is done by saying the talbiyah according to the manner of hajj that he is performing. It should be mentioned that a person does not enter into the state of ihram by merely wearing the clothes of ihram. Rather, only when he intends it in his heart and then verbally states it does he actually enter into the state of ihram. So if he is doing tamattu', then he should say, لبيك اللهم بعمرة متمتعا بها إلى الحج, meaning, I respond to your call, O Allah, with an umrah that will be deferred to a hajj. And if he is performing qiran, then he should say, لبيك اللهم بعمرة وحجة معا, meaning, I respond to your call, O Allah, with an umrah joined with hajj together. And if he is performing ifrad, he should say, لبيك اللهم بحجة, meaning, I respond to your call, O Allah, with a hajj. He is allowed to enter into a state of ihram from his house or from the miqat boundaries that were mentioned earlier. The pilgrim should recite the supplication of the talbiyah as much as possible. Ibn Umar radiyallahu anhuma reported in an authentic tradition, the talbiyah of the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam was, لبيك اللهم لبيك لبيك لا شريك لك لبيك إن الحمد والنعمة لك والملك لا شريك لك, which means, I respond to your call, O Allah, I respond to your call. I respond to your call, there is no partner along with you, I respond to your call. All praise and good is for you and the dominion, there is no partner with you. Some of the companions also added certain phrases to the talbiyah. Both Umar and his son Abdullah would add after the above phrases, I respond to your call, I exert myself continually for you, and all good is in your hands, I respond to your call, all desire is directed towards you, as are all acts. Anas ibn Malik radiyallahu anhu used to say, I respond to your call with truth in a state of worshipping you and as a servant. It is encouraged for men to raise their voices while reciting the talbiyah and to recite it many times. Sahal ibn Sa'ad radiyallahu anhu reported that the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam said, no person recites the talbiyah except that every object on his right and left recites the talbiyah with him, from the trees and the stones until the earth cuts off, meaning at a certain distance, from his left and right. Narrated by Ibn Majah and At-Tirmidhi. It has also been reported that the Prophet ﷺ said, Jibreel came to me and ordered me to command my companions to raise their voices with the talbiyah. Narrated by Malik. It is for this reason that the companions would not reach Rawha, which is a place outside of Medina, except that their throats would become tired and hoarse due to the talbiyah. As for the woman, then she too should recite the talbiyah, except that she should not raise her voice with it. It is sufficient for her to recite it in a low voice so that she can hear it herself. Entering Mecca. When the pilgrim reaches Mecca, the first place that he should go, after making sure that his belongings and luggage are in a secure place, is the Masjid al-Haram. When he enters the masjid, he should say as soon as he sees the Kaaba, O Allah, increase this house in honor, glory, respect, and righteousness, and increase its honor and respect from the one who comes for Hajj or Umrah, if he comes in a state of honoring the Kaaba and respecting it and intending righteousness. This narration was reported by Imam al-Shafi'i from Ibn Jurayj, who stated that the Prophet ﷺ would make this dua when he saw the house. The tawaf. After this, the pilgrim begins with the tawaf. It is necessary that he or she be in a state of purity, in other words, after having performed ablution, just like the prayer. The tawaf is like a greeting to the mosque and amongst the greatest of the acts of worship. Allah commanded, so let them do tawaf around the ancient house. Abdullah ibn Umar radiyallahu anhuma reported that the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam said, whoever performs tawaf around this house 7 times, counting them, he will get the reward of freeing a slave. He also stated that the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam said, he does not lower his foot and raise the other, except that Allah removes because of it a sin and gives because of it a good deed. Narrated by Tirmidhi. This tawaf is obligatory upon the person performing the Qiran or the Tamattu' pilgrimage, as it counts as his tawaf of Umrah. The one performing the Ifrad, on the other hand, is not obligated to perform this tawaf, but is rewarded if he does so, and it is counted as his tawaf al-Qudum, or arrival tawaf. Imam Malik rahimahullah disagreed with this point and obligated this tawaf on the one performing Ifrad as well. Before beginning the tawaf, it is recommended for him to do ittiba', meaning that he take his upper garment and put it beneath his right arm, thus leaving it bare, and then throwing it over his left shoulder. Then he begins the tawaf from the black stone by pointing at it with his hand and saying, Bismillah wallahu akbar. If he is able to touch it or kiss it, then all the better. But let him beware of causing harm to other Muslims in the process of making his way towards it. Then he circumambulates the Kaaba 7 times, making sure that the Kaaba is on his left side. And it is encouraged for him to quicken his pace in the first 3 rounds. This is known as Raml, and walking normally in the last 4. Every time he passes by the Yemeni corner or the black stone, he should point with his hand at it and pronounce the takbir. In other words, Allahu Akbar. It is also recommended that he say in between the Yemeni corner and the black stone, رَبَّنَا آتِنَا فِي الدُّنْيَا حَسَنَةً وَفِي الْآخِرَةِ حَسَنَةً وَقِنَا عَذَابَ النَّارِ, which means, O our Lord, give us good in this life and good in the hereafter, and save us from the fire of hell. Then, when he finishes the tawaf, he should go behind the Maqam Ibrahim if he can. Otherwise, he can go to any part of the mosque and pray 2 rak'ahs. Jabir radiyallahu anhu reported that the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam performed tawaf and then prayed 2 rak'ahs behind the Maqam Ibrahim. He recited قُلْ يَا أَيُّهَا الْكَافِرُونَ in the first rak'ah and قُلْ هُوَ اللَّهُ أَحَدٌ in the second, narrated by Muslim. It is essential that the pilgrim leaves all vain talk during his tawaf and instead do dhikr of Allah, or read the Quran, or supplicate to Allah. The Prophet ﷺ said, the tawaf around the house is considered like salah, except that Allah has allowed speech during it. So whoever speaks, then let him speak only good. Narrated by Tirmidhi. The sa'i. Once the pilgrim has completed the 2 rak'ahs, he should start his sa'i. The pilgrim that is performing the Ifrad Hajj will count this sa'i to be his sa'i of Hajj, whereas the one performing Tamattu' will count this as his sa'i of Umrah, and he will have to perform another sa'i for his Hajj. As for the one performing Qiran, there is a difference of opinion concerning his sa'i. Abu Hanifa rahimahullah holds the opinion that the one performing qiran must perform 2 sa'is, just like the one performing tamattu'. So according to him, this sa'i must be done with the attention of the umrah. As for the majority of scholars, they hold the opinion that a person performing qiran hajj need only perform 1 sa'i, and it will count for his umrah and hajj. The sa'i begins with Mount Safa. If possible, the pilgrim should climb up the mountain. Jabir radiallahu anhu reported that the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam went to Mount Safa, and when he came close to it, he recited the verse from the Quran, إِنَّ الصَّفَا وَالْمَرْوَةَ مِن شَعَائِرِ اللَّهِ فَمَنْ حَجَّ الْبَيْتَ أَوْ اعْتَمَرَ فَلَا جُنَاحَ عَلَيْهِ أَن يَطَّوَّفَ بِهِمَا وَمَنْ تَطَوَّعَ خَيْرًا فَإِنَّ اللَّهَ شَاكِرٌ عَلِيمٌ. Meaning, verily Safa and Marwa are of the signs of Allah. So whoever performs Hajj or Umrah of the house, then there is no sin upon him if he walks between them. And whoever does good, then Allah is ever grateful, all knowledgeable. Then the Prophet ﷺ said, we begin by what Allah Himself began. So he began with Safa and climbed it up until he could see the Kaaba. He then faced the Kaaba and said, لا إله إلا الله وحده لا شريك له له الملك وله الحمد وهو على كل شيء قدير لا إله إلا الله وحده أنجز وعده ونصر عبده وهزم الأحزاب وحده. Meaning, there is no deity worthy of worship except Allah alone, having no partners. To Him belongs the kingdom and all praise, and He is capable of all things. There is no deity worthy of worship except Allah. He fulfilled His promise and aided His servant and destroyed the armies by Himself. After saying these prayers, the pilgrim should descend from Safa and walk to Marwa. When he comes to the 2 green pillars, he should quicken his pace between them, and then continue walking until he reaches Marwa. When he reaches Marwa, he should do the same as he did on Safa. After doing so, he has completed one of the 7 circuits. He then completes the rest of the 7 in the same manner. Imam Ahmad ibn Hanbal rahimahullah said, he should also make the dua of Ibn Umar. There is no deity worthy of worship except Allah, and we do not worship anything except Him, making our religion sincere towards Him, even if the disbelievers hate it. O Allah, protect me with your religion and with your obedience and obedience to your Prophet. O Allah, keep me away from your limits, which you have prohibited. O Allah, make me amongst those who love you and love your angels and prophets and messengers and your pious servants. O Allah, make me beloved to you and to your angels and prophets and pious servants. O Allah, make the easy path comfortable for me, meaning the straight path, and make the difficult path hard upon me, and forgive me in the hereafter and in this world, and make me amongst the righteous leaders and amongst the inheritors of the glorious paradise, and forgive my sins on the day of judgment. O Allah, you have stated, call upon me, I will answer you, and you do not break your promise. O Allah, since you have guided me to Islam, then do not take me away from it, or it away from me, until you have taken my soul, and I am in the state of Islam. O Allah, do not send me forward to punishment, nor leave me behind in this world during times of evil tribulations. Imam Ahmad rahimahullah also said, Ibn Mas'ud radiyallahu anhu, when he used to perform sa'i between Safa and Marwa, would say, O my Lord, forgive and have mercy, and forgive me what you know of my sins. You are the most honorable, the most generous. If the pilgrim is performing tamattu', then after the completion of the sa'i, he will have left the state of ihram. However, the one performing ifrad or qiran will remain in his ihram at this point. The sa'i is one of the pillars of Hajj, without which the Hajj would not be complete. Aisha radiallahu anha said, the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam performed sa'i between Safa and Marwa, and the Muslims did too. So it is one of the traditions of Hajj. I swear, the one that does not perform sa'i, Allah will not consider his Hajj complete. The Prophet ﷺ said, perform the sa'i, for Allah has prescribed the sa'i for you. Narrated by Abu Dawood. Because of these evidences, the scholars have unanimously agreed that the sa'i is one of the pillars of Hajj. It is permitted, however, for the one performing ifrad or qiran to delay this sa'i until the time of the tawaf al-ifada, which will be discussed shortly. The actions on the 8th of Dhul Hijjah. On the 8th day of Dhul Hijjah, which is also known as the day of Tarwiyah, it is encouraged that the pilgrim leave for Mina before the Dhuhr prayer and remain there until he prays 5 prayers. In other words, Dhuhr, Asr, Maghrib, Isha, and the Fajr of the next day. If he is performing the Tamattu' Hajj, then he should return to the state of Ihram on this day in preparation for the day of Arafah. The actions on the 9th of Dhul Hijjah. Once the sun has risen on the 9th of Dhul Hijjah, the pilgrim leaves for Arafah. It is recommended that when the sun reaches its zenith, he should attend the sermon, if possible, and then pray Dhuhr and Asr together in Qasr shortened format. Jabir radiyallahu anhu reported that the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam went to Mina on the 8th of Dhul Hijjah and prayed Dhuhr, Asr, Maghrib, Isha, and Fajr. Then he waited until the sun rose. He ordered that a tent be pitched on Namirah, which is on the outskirts of Arafah. Then he rode to Arafah and stopped at the tent. When the sun had passed its zenith, he ordered for his camel to be prepared. Then he mounted it and gave a sermon, which was his farewell sermon. After that, Bilal called the adhan, and then the iqamah, and the Prophet ﷺ led the Dhuhr prayer. Then the iqamah was called again, and he led the Asr prayer, without praying anything in between the two prayers. The Prophet ﷺ rode until he reached Arafah. He then faced the Qibla and remained standing until the sun set, and a little bit of the redness of the sky had disappeared. After that, the Prophet ﷺ set out for Muzdalifah. The pilgrim should realize that any place inside the boundaries of Arafah is permissible for him, as long as he avoids a place known as Batn Urana. This is based on the statement of the Prophet ﷺ in which he said, all of Arafah is a place of standing, but elevate yourselves from the Batn Urana. Narrated by Ibn Majah. The scholars of Islam have unanimously agreed that the standing of Arafah is one of the pillars of Hajj, and whoever misses it must give a sacrifice and perform Hajj the following year. This ruling is based on the statement of the Prophet ﷺ, Hajj is Arafah. In order for the standing of Arafah to be accepted, he must stay in Arafah from after midday until sunset. So if he arrives before midday and leaves before midday, then there will be no Hajj for him. And if he arrives after midday and leaves before sunset, then his Hajj will not be valid according to Imam Malik rahimahullah, and he must repeat it the following year. The majority of scholars, however, stated that his Hajj in this case would be valid, but he must pay a sacrifice and expiation. However, if a person is able to stand in Arafah before the Fajr of the following day, even if he only stands for a few moments before the Fajr of the 10th of Dhul Hijjah, then he will be considered as having fulfilled his Hajj. This is due to the fact that Abdullah ibn Ma'mar reported that the Prophet ﷺ said, Hajj is Arafat. So whoever manages to stand in Arafah before the sun rises, he has fulfilled it. Reported by Abu Dawood, Tirmidhi, Nasa'i, and Ibn Majah. On this day, the pilgrim should strive in worship, remembering Allah and making dua, because this is one of the days that the prayer is hoped to be answered. The Prophet ﷺ said, there is not a single day that Allah frees more slaves from the fire of hell than the day of Arafah, for He comes close, all praise and glory be to Him, and boasts to the angels and says, what do these pilgrims desire? Related by Muslim. He should also pray what the Prophet ﷺ advised, for he said, the prayer that the prophets before me prayed with the most, as well as myself on the day of Arafah, is La ilaha illallah wahdahu la sharika lah, lahul mulku wa lahul hamd, yuhyi wa yumit, wa huwa hayyun la yamut, biyadihi al-khayr, وهو على كل شيء قدير اللهم اجعل في قلبي نورا وفي سمعي نورا ويسر لي أمري, which means, there is no deity worthy of worship except Allah alone, having no partners. To Him belongs the kingship, and to Him is all praise. He gives life and death, while He is ever living and never dies. In His hand is all good, and He is capable of all things. O Allah, make in my heart light, and in my hearing light, and make my affairs easy for me. Spending the night in Muzdalifah. Once the sun has set on the day of Arafah, the pilgrim should head for Muzdalifah. He should proceed calmly, for Jabir radiallahu anhu reported that the Prophet ﷺ said, while setting out for Muzdalifah, O people, peacefully, peacefully. The perfect manner in which one stays in Muzdalifah is that he comes to it, then he prays Maghrib and Isha together, combined and shortened, then he sleeps until Fajr. He should pray Fajr at its earliest time, then stand at the holy ground, meaning any place in Muzdalifah, and make dua facing the Qibla until the sky becomes yellow and the morning light becomes very clear. Whoever does it in this manner has followed exactly the manner in which the Prophet ﷺ performed it. The pilgrim can stay at any place inside of Muzdalifah. The Prophet ﷺ said, all of Muzdalifah is a valid standing place, but elevate yourselves from the valley of Muhassir. It is also recommended for the pilgrim to gather the stones that he will throw at the Jamarat from Muzdalifah. The majority of the scholars held the view that it is obligatory to spend the night in Muzdalifah, but they disagreed concerning the minimum amount of time that would qualify. Imam Malik rahimahullah stated that the minimum time that one is obligated to spend in Muzdalifah is the time it takes a person to descend from his mount and pray Maghrib and Isha. Imams Shafi'i and Ahmad rahimahumullah stated that if a person spent half the night at Muzdalifah, it would qualify, and no expiation would be upon him. But if he spent less than half the night, then he would have to sacrifice a sheep as an expiation. However, all the scholars agreed that the sick, weak, and women could leave after half of the night, without any blame or sin being upon them, This is based on the hadith of Ibn Abbas radiyallahu anhuma, in which he stated, I was with the group that the Prophet ﷺ sent forward of the weak members of his family, the night of Muzdalifah, from Muzdalifah to Mina. We did not perform the Fajr prayer with him. The actions on the 10th day of Dhul Hijjah. When the sun is almost about to rise, the pilgrim should set out from Muzdalifah to Mina. Once he arrives, after sunset, he should throw 7 pebbles at the Jamratul Aqaba, saying the Takbir or Allahu Akbar when he throws each pebble. He also stops saying the Talbiyah at the beginning of the first throw. According to Imam Ahmad and Ash-Shafi'i, rahimahumullah, it is permissible for those who left Muzdalifah after the middle of the night to throw the pebbles before the Fajr of this day. This is based on the hadith of Aisha radiyallahu anha, in which she said, the Prophet ﷺ sent Salama on the night of the 10th day, in other words, the night before the 10th. So she threw the stones at the Jamrah before Fajr. Then she performed Tawaf al-Ifadah, narrated by Abu Dawud. Also, Asma radiyallahu anha said that she threw the stones at Jamratul Aqaba at night and said, we used to do it during the time of the Prophet ﷺ, reported by the 6 books of hadith. However, the Hanafis and the Malikis hold the opinion that the earliest permissible time to throw the stones is after sunrise on the 10th of Dhul Hijjah. The scholars differed concerning the latest permissible time in which one can throw the stones. Imam Malik, rahimahullah, stated that the latest time was the sunset of the 10th day, and if a pilgrim delayed it after that, he would have to pay a sacrifice. Imam Abu Hanifa, rahimahullah, stated that the latest one could throw was the Fajr of the 11th day, and if it was delayed beyond that, he would have to pay a sacrifice. The other scholars, however, stated that even if the pilgrim threw the stones the next day, there would be no blame or expiation upon him. Once a pilgrim has thrown his stones, then he should sacrifice his animal if it is with him, whether it is the obligatory sacrifice of the one performing qiran or tamattu', or a voluntary sacrifice from the one performing ifrat. Jabir radiyallahu anhu reported that the Prophet ﷺ threw the stones from the shallow part of the valley, then sacrificed 63 camels with his own hands, narrated by Muslim. After he has completed this, he should either shave or trim his hair. To shave one's head is preferred, since the Prophet ﷺ shaved his head and then said, O Allah, have mercy on those who shave their heads. They said, O Messenger of Allah, and on those who trimmed. But he said once again, O Allah, have mercy on those who shave their heads. They repeated, O Messenger of Allah, and on those who trimmed, until, after the 3rd time, the Prophet ﷺ said, and on those who trimmed. As for women, then they do not shave their hair, but instead they cut a small portion of it off. This is because the Prophet ﷺ said, women do not shave, they only have to cut. Narrated by Abu Dawud. Once the pilgrim has thrown stones at the Jamratul Aqaba, everything that was prohibited for him during his ihram is allowed, except for women. Salama reported that the Prophet ﷺ said, "On this day, it is allowed for you to do everything that was prohibited for you except women." Narrated by Abu Dawood. Then the pilgrim leaves for Mecca to perform the Tawaf al-Ifada, which is also known as Tawaf al-Ziyarah. This is one of the integral pillars of Hajj, so if a person does not perform it, his Hajj will not be complete. This Tawaf is referred to in the verse, "Then let them complete their prescribed duties and perform their vows and circumambulate the ancient house." In other words, perform Tawaf. This pillar cannot be made up by a sacrifice. It is for this reason that if a woman is in her period at this time, then it becomes obligatory for her guardians to wait in Mecca until she finishes her period, purifies herself, and then performs the Tawaf. There is a difference of opinion over this issue, and some scholars state that if it is not possible for her guardians to wait, then she should perform Tawaf in that state, ensuring that she ties a cloth around her private area to avoid contaminating the masjid. As for the earliest time that this Tawaf is permissible, then according to Shafi'i and Ahmad, rahimahumallah, it is in the middle of the night before the 10th, based upon the hadith of Salama that was just mentioned. According to the Hanafis and Malikis, however, it is not permissible before the Fajr of the 10th. It is permissible for the pilgrim to delay this Tawaf until he finishes from all the acts of the Hajj and is about to depart from Mecca. If he does this, then his one Tawaf at this time will take the place of both the Ifada Tawaf and the farewell Tawaf. Once he has performed the Ifada Tawaf, then all things are permissible for him that were prohibited, including women. The order of the acts on the 10th day are as follows. First, throwing of the stones. Second, sacrificing. Third, shaving or trimming of the hair. Fourth, Tawaf of Ifada. This order is encouraged to follow, but according to the majority of the scholars, there is no sin or blame on anyone who performs these acts in a different order. This is based on the narration of Ibn Abbas radiyallahu anhuma, who stated that the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam was not asked on that day concerning the changing of order of these acts, except that he said, "Do as you have done, and there is no blame." Narrated by Bukhari. As for Imam Malik, rahimahullah, he stated that it was obligatory to throw the stones of Aqaba first, and if someone did another act before the throwing of the stones, he would have to pay an expiation. As for Imam Abu Hanifa, rahimahullah, he obligated this order upon the pilgrim, basing this on the actions of the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam himself. Once the pilgrim has finished the Tawaf, he should return to Mina to spend the days of Tashriq, in other words, the days of the 11th, the 12th, and 13th of Dhul Hijjah. According to the majority of the scholars, it is obligatory upon the pilgrim to spend the nights of these days in Mina, and if a person does not do so, he is obliged to sacrifice an animal as an atonement. The only exception that is made is for those who have a valid excuse. For example, the elderly, the sick, or a person whose occupation requires that he leaves Mina. This exception is based on the fact that the Prophet ﷺ allowed Al-Abbas ibn Abdul Muttalib radiyallahu anhu to spend the nights of the days of Tashriq in Mecca. since he was of those responsible for the transportation of water from Mecca to Mina. Narrated by Bukhari and Muslim. Imam Abu Hanifa rahimahullah and Imam Ahmed rahimahullah, according to one report from him, and others as well, held the opinion that the spending of the night was only recommended, and thus the person who left it did not have to pay any penalty. They based this opinion on the report of Ibn Abbas radiyallahu anhuma, in which he stated, "Once you have thrown the stones, then spend the night wherever you wish." The actions of the 11th and 12th days. It is obligatory upon the pilgrim to throw stones at the 3 jamarat on the 11th and the 12th days. He should begin with the Jamratul Ula, or the first Jamrah, which is the one that is closest to the mosque known as Masjid al-Khayf. He should then move on to the middle Jamrah, Jamratul Thaniya, and then the last one, Jamratul Aqaba. Aisha radiyallahu anha reported that the Prophet's sallallahu alaihi wasallam sunnah in these days was to spend the nights in Mina. Then he would stone the jamarat after midday. For each jamrah, 7 stones. He would pronounce takbir, or Allahu Akbar, while throwing each stone. After the first and second jamrah, he would stand for a long time and pray to Allah, making dua. And after the third jamrah, he would not stand. Reported by Abu Dawud. The majority of the scholars hold the opinion that the time for throwing these stones begins from midday and extends until the Fajr of the following day. However, there is an opinion from Imam Abu Hanifa rahimahullah that it is permissible to begin throwing after sunrise. And this is also the opinion of Ata ibn Abi Rabah and Muhammad ibn Ali ibn al-Husayn from the Tabi'een, or from the successors, rahimahumullah. And in this opinion is a great concession for the Muslims, especially in our times, in which the rush is severe and the crowd is very disorderly, to the extent that some pilgrims even die from being trampled over by other pilgrims due to the rush. Imam al-Shafi'i rahimahullah unconditionally allowed the pilgrim to delay the stoning of one day to another, either the 12th or the 13th, whereas Imam Ahmed only allowed it for those with a valid excuse, such as the elderly or sick. Once the pilgrim has thrown the stones of the 12th day, he is allowed to leave Mina and perform the farewell tawaf, or tawaf al-wada', as long as he leaves Mina before sunset. If the sun sets while he is still in Mina, then he is obligated to stay another day in Mina and throw the stones of the 13th day, and this is according to the majority of the scholars. Imam Abu Hanifa rahimahullah, however, allowed the pilgrim to leave without any penalty as long as he left before the Fajr of the 13th day. If one leaves after 2 days, this is known as ta'ajjul, or leaving early. The pilgrim has the option of leaving after either 2 days or 3. Allah says, "So whoever does ta'ajjul in 2 days, then there is no blame upon him. And whoever delays until the 3rd day, then there is no blame upon him, for him who is pious." It is preferred to spend all 3 days in Mina, since this was the practice of the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam. Once he has completed these rites, then he is obligated to perform the tawaf al-wada' before he leaves from Mecca. The only exception is the menstruating woman, if she has already performed her tawaf al-ifada. In this case, the woman may leave with her group without performing tawaf al-wada'. Ibn Abbas radiyallahu anhuma reported, the people were commanded that the last rite should be the tawaf, except that a concession was made for the menstruating woman. Narrated by Bukhari and Muslim. This tawaf is obligatory according to the majority, and if a person leaves it, he is obligated to offer a sacrifice as an expiation. However, Imam Malik rahimahullah considered this tawaf to be recommended or sunnah, so if a person left it, there would be no penalty upon him. And with the tawaf al-wada', the actions of Hajj come to an end. However, the pilgrim should be conscious of the sacrifices that he has to offer. So the one performing tamattu' and qiran must offer a sacrifice of Hajj. And the one who does one of the prohibited acts during his ihram must also offer a sacrifice as a penalty. Lastly, the one who leaves an obligatory act of Hajj must offer an expiation sacrifice as well. One of the blessings that Allah has provided in our times is the service that the Islamic Development Bank, under the supervision of the World Assembly of Muslim Youth, or WAMI, provides to the pilgrims in order to ease the sacrificial process on them. For all that a pilgrim must do is go to any of the many branches of the bank, which are found in plenty outside the harams of Mecca and Medina during the Hajj season, and buy a sacrificial coupon. The pilgrim may buy a coupon for an obligatory sacrifice, or as an expiation for doing a prohibited act during ihram, or for leaving an obligatory act. Then, the bank will take the responsibility of purchasing the animal, sacrificing it, and distributing the meat to the needy. We ask Allah that He makes our Hajj an accepted Hajj, and forgives us all our sins, and rewards us for our efforts. And may peace and blessings be upon the Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam and his family and followers.
Allahu Akbar, Allahu Akbar. Allahu Akbar, Allahu Akbar. أشهد أن لا إله إلا الله. أشهد أن لا إله إلا الله. أشهد أن محمدا رسول الله. أشهد أن محمدا رسول الله. حي على الصلاة.